Welcome to MOTS, where we'll be applying the Manzer or Mosi-Thurlow scale of quantitative analysis of pop culture narrative through a binary system.
Or MOTS. This podcast contains spoilers, mature content, and language. Viewer discretion advised. Welcome back to another episode of Netflix Roulette, where sometimes you win big, and sometimes you lose everything.
Or sometimes you just break even.
Yeah. So we went on Hamster Republic and got action films and action films involving animals. So we did our a random selection of 6 films, and we ended up with The Hunter with Willem Defoe and Sam Neill, which is not as exciting as it sounds. My name is Jonathan E. Manzer, here with Rich Perry.
Good evening.
Stephen Ramosi.
Hello.
And Scott Thurlow.
Good eye, mate.
And yes, The Hunter is a 2011 film made in Australia and probably sponsored by the Australian Tourist Board. But Scott, would you like to give the funny logline?
Yeah, so I tried to come up with a bunch of them, but really I came up with Good Willem Hunting. It's not, I don't know. We'll speak about why that may or not be applicable, but that's what I finally settled on.
Might have had an off-the-cuff one. Maybe funny, maybe
what
not.
What do you got?
Tasmanian Tiger Dundee.
All right. That's pretty good, too. I like that as well.
Well, I'll give the actual synopsis with Willem Defoe is hired to track down a animal that is thought extinct in the Tasmanian wilderness. He befriends a family and becomes kind of a father figure. And then we watch him hunt.
And he finds the animal eventually,
yes.
Fixes the cable.
And we watch him hunt. And we watch him hunt. Anyway, onto the intro with Stephen Ramosi.
All right, so this movie starts off with an exposition dump about what Willem Dafoe's character is supposedly trying to find, which is a Tasmanian tiger. He's hired by a shady corporation to go find this thing.
Umbrella.
Goes to Australia, gets into a house, doesn't like it, goes to a bar, doesn't like the people there.
No, they don't like him either.
And yeah, well, actually, it's more that they don't like him. Tell him greenies go home or whatever. Decides to go into the woods to go, fulfill his mission. Sam Neill becomes his guide. I guess was sent by the quote unquote university or whatever the hell to be his guide. And then at some point he looks off into the beautiful Australian wilderness and says, "I'll take it from here, Sam Neill. You can go home." And I think that's where we decided the intro ends.
Yep.
For some clarification, Willem Defoe is hired by a Red Leaf Corporation, and he's posing as a university scientist, which for some reason, it's sort of like in America, he's like a northern academic going down south.
Yeah,
and they're like, we don't like your kind around here. Yeah, but it's the Australian version of that, and I never understood really the motivations behind any of this hostility aside from just generic xenophobia.
Yeah.
I mean, I agree with how I speak about later, but yeah, it was like stereotypical caricature of that for like seemingly no reason, which we'll speak about, but yes, it was there in the intro.
For that very simple intro, it might have been the part that I enjoyed the most of this movie. I liked the beginning where it kind of introduced his character without him saying anything. He goes through a whole scene in the hotel. It's him like looking off into the distance, and then they introduce the bath leitmotif, yes, which will come back several times.
I suppose we'll call it that.
He immerses himself and then does the standard, his eyes open while he's under the water. So that scene was all right. And then the exposition scene I thought was cut fairly well, just because as soon as his contact or whatever starts going into the exposition about what's going on and where he's going, they cut to Australia and it's him kind of finding out where he's going to be visually while he's having the information that he needs told to him in a voiceover. So it wasn't bad. I might give this a 1.
See, my problem is that I was waiting for something to grab my attention throughout this entire film. And the intro was, well, we saw this movie described as a slow burn, and it's definitely a slow burn.
It certainly is that.
I'm like, maybe it'll pick up. I kept thinking, like, maybe it'll pick up as this movie is going along. But if I'm thinking that right at the introduction, it's a bad introduction. And not that I don't think it's like they give you the necessary information, they're setting up characters, but it's not necessarily boring, but it's paced so slowly that I lose interest constantly.
All right, I'm probably on Steve-O's side. Like, yeah, reading the little log line that they had on Netflix about this film, and given the intro, I was like, I believed it. I was invested into it. I was like, okay, I think they set it up like quickly enough. Yeah, they gave you the exposition, and Willem Dafoe's character, situation, what he's going to do, and what his mission is. So I thought that was fine. I think perhaps like in retrospect, it's lessened. But the intro, I think I'm going to lean towards the one because at least it was an interesting setup to me. Everything else kind of falls apart, which we'll speak about.
For me,
but nevertheless,
for me, the way that they had this set up, they made hunting such serious business.
Yeah.
Like at first, I thought he was an assassin. By the way, they had like the clandestine meeting.
Yeah, and
in a hotel
cleaning
room.
his gun and everything.
Yeah, and that was all fine.
And then I was hoping that they would keep that seriousness throughout the movie for what he was doing. And then, as we'll talk about, kind of just went into family drama mode.
Yeah, and yeah, so like again, just intro wise, it sets up like, oh, you're gonna watch Willem Defoe perhaps hunt a deadly creature, and maybe like in my mind, I thought maybe he'll get like stranded in the wilderness and have to like use what he needs to survive. But regardless, I thought it was a fine enough intro, solid. I think I'll probably give it a 1 on that front.
Yeah, I think I'll probably stick with the 1 on this one. It to me, it was honestly the most interesting part of the movie, and it kind of just slowly drew out and lost me throughout. But so I'll give it a 1.
I'll give it a 1 as well.
You people are very generous. Because
that is true. I might be generous.
That might be the only generous thing I'll say about this movie, but I will give it a 1 for intro.
This movie never lost my interest because it never got my interest to begin with.
That's fair. That's a perfectly valid statement.
We can give it a 0 for that.
All right.
Okay, and Rich, on to you with the body.
Okay, so Willem Defoe begins his hunting expedition and keeps finding reasons to go back down the mountain to visit his boarding family.
Boarding family, yeah.
And through a series of talks and baths, they begin to bond.
It's amazing.
Until trouble arises when the loggers and Redleaf start encroaching in on his newfound happiness. Until finally, another hunter is sent to go after the tiger, since they don't feel since they feel he's gone native.
He's gone a little Kurtz.
Yeah. And the guy forces him to take him to where he found the Tasmanian cave, or the tiger's cave. A shootout ensues, and Willem Defoe walks away victorious.
Well, I think that might be even part of the conclusion.
Oh, sorry.
I think it overlaps. Like we were talking just precast, like where to divide it. It doesn't actually matter.
Yeah,
pretty much.
It doesn't matter.
So even calling it there is fine, I would say.
So actually, Scott and I had, and Steve, I believe you were there for off cast. We're having a discussion about like how should we rank pacing when it comes to films, whether we should do an intro, body, conclusion.
Mm-hmm. Yep.
And this happens to be a film where pacing.
This is the perfect example of pacing gone awry. Yes.
The best way to describe the body is it's like watching Bear Grylls, like Man vs. Wild, except with no commentary of what's going on. Just people wander through the wilderness, setting traps, sleeping.
Not even people. One dude.
And anyway, that's the entire film.
I agree. It has a huge pacing problem, and it is largely because of the body. So I'm going to read it a huge 0. Like I said, you just sort of like, while you're giving the intro a 1, I'm going to be harsh on this film from henceforth. This question
feel
onwards.
that like it had no idea what kind of movie it wanted to be.
Yes, exactly, Rich. I agree with that.
It seemed like every time that it was starting to become
one kind of
movie, he would leave up for the mountain. And then like it would be a haunting movie, and then he'd go back down to the mountain. It would become a family drama.
Yeah. You can't be both at once, and it.
Well, you can, but just
I guess
pace
you
it
could
better.
try, but like, yeah, exactly. So I'm giving it the body a huge 0, just because, spoiler, that's my score because of that fact, because of the pacing problem.
I also had no sense of time passing in this work. He's supposed to be gone for weeks at a time.
Yeah.
But it feels like he left
Well,
for like a day or
he
two.
keeps trying to leave for weeks at a time.
Yeah.
That's a big issue.
And it does a bad job of telling you that.
That's a big issue of this movie. I have no sense of time, and I have no sense of space and place in this. And that's... I hate to say it because there are some beautiful shots, but that's going to really hurt probably the style score later on because...
Okay, go ahead.
That's a director, that's your job as a director to give this sense of place and space and time. You need to make this movie feel like there, as a specific example, there's supposedly a town, but it consists of apparently a bar and a gas station, and that's it. Every time, like you said, every time he's up the mountain, every time he goes back up, quote unquote, which he says like 9 times throughout the movie, it seems like he's gone for like no time at all, but supposedly it's like 2 weeks at a time. I
don't think it's supposed to be 2 weeks at a time, though.
Well, the thing is, if they don't address either way, whether and they occasionally will drop a line, but they're ambiguous.
I just assumed that he was supposed to take 1 2-week trip, come back for 2 days, and then like finish his business.
Resupply.
So like every time he like gets focused on going after the tiger, he's just like, all right, doing my 2 weeks right now, and then he just decides to come home the next day because
maybe
that's true. So the movie was unclear about it. Like that was his sensible plan was to go for 12 days, then resupply for a day or two, then go back. But again, I'm gonna cut it up slightly differently, Steve-O. I'm gonna take off narrative points because of that, but I'll still give style probably a good score when we get to it. But you have to convey to your audiences how much time is passing and where the action is happening.
Yeah.
Here's the thing. The central conflict in this film is between Willem Defoe getting involved with this family, oddly enough, with the children first, in a sense of like developing a bond with them, and then with their widowed mother. And I actually
gets her off the drugs.
Sure.
Yeah, as weird as it was at times, and they were kind of like a hippy dippy family too.
They're all these, mate.
I actually bought the chemistry between all of them as a family, but the conflict is between him trying to be this like skilled hunter and going after this endangered animal for a corporation and finding something to ground him in reality. The fact that there's no time and no space really diminishes that conflict.
Yes.
Yeah,
I agree with that.
It never feels like he's actually away. Really, even though he is obviously away, when he's in the woods or in the mountain, he just seems to go from different terrain to different terrain without traversing that area.
It seemed like everything
ends up in a new place.
It seemed like everything was like 20 minutes away from each other.
Yeah.
And again, I think they tried to establish that the family might be under threat from the corporation, and that the original husband died in some shady activity. But again, it never felt like he had a choice between having to sacrifice their safety for his job. And like I think that was what they were really trying to do for it, and it failed absolutely.
Yes, it fell flat on its face. I agree, and I'm going to give it a 0 to the body.
I'm going to also give it a 0.
0.
Okay, it's onto me with the conclusion. So as Rich alluded to, a second hunter from the corporation comes in, and then Manchester by the Sea happens.
One part of Manchester by the Sea.
The family house burns down. I assume from the fact that a fire grate was untended. Yes. The widow and the daughter die, and the son is
shipped off to an orphan school. It doesn't actually matter, but that's what happens.
And
I think even Sam Neill says it doesn't matter.
I believe
Sam's like, whatever. He's somewhere good. That's where he's going.
I'm done with this film right now.
Willem Defoe and the new hunter have a standoff for about 5 minutes, and Willem Defoe wins. And then he eventually finds the
elusive tiger,
kills it, burns it, and then goes off to the sunset with his new adopted son, I suppose. The end.
I guess. Sure. And like again, in the same way, like the slow burn thing keeps sleeping in my mind. That's certainly what the body was. But that doesn't make it good. Like you can't slap on that description and automatically have a positive connotation to it. So the ending was sort of abrupt to me. Okay, finds it. Yeah, he has a duel with the other hunter, wins, kills him, buries his body out in the wilderness, finds a tiger.
Doesn't bury. He just moves it off to the
he just
side.
shoves it under
He tucks it
log
under a rock
or whatever. Sure. Then he finds a tiger, shoots it, burns it. So I guess they can't harvest it or whatever. Like there was 1 or 2 lines where like they want it for its toxin producing glands or whatever, some bullshit like that. But that didn't matter either.
It came way too late in the movie.
Yeah, it hardly matters. It's a detail that they tried to introduce to make you care, but at that point, that was never going to happen. And so in the opposite way that the body was so meandering and like pointless, this was completely abrupt and also pointless. So I'm going to give the conclusion a 0.
Yeah, I don't. There's not much to say about the conclusion. It's just you mentioned the abruptness of the ending, which it kind of is, but it also seemed to drag on.
Yeah,
as
anyway,
well.
we all of us were like, cannot wait for this movie to end.
There were
please.
like at least 3 different points where I was like, "Oh, that's where the movie should have ended."
Yeah.
Oh, they're still going. All right.
yeah,
For the
so-
most part, though, it handled it. It went out of its way to close all threads it felt necessary to close.
I guess I just didn't care about those threads. I
but
guess I want to
the
say
fact that they just. It's almost like they ran out of money to pay the daughter and the widow, so we're just going to kill them off screen.
That was so abrupt as
Yeah.
well. Yeah.
like I said. Yeah. Anyway,
it's
And why
even-
not just kill the whole family? Like, why did they leave the son alive?
for a ray of hope or whatever. Like,
and also, why not show that guy like starting the
Yeah.
fire that burned the house down? Like this.
But as Sam Neill
it was
says,
implied.
it might have just
No,
been
no.
because of the candle thing.
No,
he
that was definitely
convinced
cover-up.
himself.
Yeah. But it doesn't matter. Like, it was handled poorly. Like, a better film would have addressed all of that and would have made us believe it and buy into it and would have made, I guess, tied those
I
threads
think,
together.
you know what they
better.
should have done? They should have switched the scenes where he walked in and like looked at the family, and when he went into the laptop,
Yeah.
just have him walk in, go to the laptop, and then look on the family and zero in on the fireplace.
Yeah. Right,
Then have
exactly.
that happen.
It's kind of an editing problem. But
Yeah.
again, I think it all goes to pacing at large, and I have to give it negative credit, if you will.
Yeah, it's negative credit. 0.
Yeah, it's a 0.
Yup.
Okay, and on to themes with Scott.
All right. So I actually don't know. I may defer and toss it to you, gentlemen. If I had to say which a theme I think this movie is covering, is that
Don't waste the hot water.
That's what I was gonna say.
well, yes, we'll go into that. But like a serious-ish theme. Sure, natural resources. He's hunting a supposedly extinct creature, an animal, but in fact it's the last one of its kind. And in order to, I guess, mercy kill it, he does that.
Supposedly, it's the last one of his kind.
Yeah. I mean, it had to come from somewhere.
Sure, it was the last. I think they said it was the last female tiger. But again, that detail is, while contained in the movie, doesn't actually matter in the end. So I just don't know. Like you guys tell me.
You should have killed it
What themes have you
and then found a den of cubs.
either
They'd be like,
either?
now I've murdered this creature because they were coming back.
I
Now
would
they're definitely
No,
going.
no,
I
no. That's when he goes and tracks down the boy and they raise those cubs as their own.
I would have preferred, Steve, what you just said. Although, Rich, that's funny too. But all I'm saying is, like, I don't know. Like, something probably about, like, again, the greenies versus the loggers. Something
That's
like
not
that.
even
But-
real.
but,
That
like,
was like a.
right. But it was randomly dropped in there. I guess generally respect the earth, I
No,
guess. But
it's weird because they do have. It seems at the surface level to be a like pro environment,
right. That's what I'm trying to say.
but they do go out of their way to give the other point of view of like protecting the environment is costing this
People
the people
jobs.
jobs,
I get it.
and like
Sure.
this is the only source of like income for this town that doesn't exist. Because
I
it's
hear
just
what
a
you're
gas
saying, but
station
it's
and-
overshadowed by the fact that Willem Defoe has no stake in either of these
Yes.
sides, and like
Exactly.
the movie is from his point of view.
Yeah.
Oh, I absolutely agree, and that's the big thing. Is
He's a mercenary.
It's offering up. Isn't this an interesting argument? I don't want him to take a side.
And maybe if he'd actually had any kind of positive relationship outside of that family,
Or switch sides, sure.
that would have mattered more because he then would have had a stake in, hey, I want to help these loggers out or whatever.
Yeah, then
it's
finding
it
the
never
tiger.
actually became.
Then he could find the tiger for 3 different, or have a reason to find it for 3 different people.
Yeah.
I mean, you got Red Leaf, who wants purely monetary gain.
I guess at the end he like chose against Redleaf.
Yeah.
I get it, but you're right. He had no stake in either side.
But you're kind of introduced to other groups who'd be interested in it.
Yeah.
Like, I mean, very, very briefly. And I think that it's more of like, look, you're going to start like burning down people's houses. Nobody gets this. And then it just burns it. And I don't know. I just don't feel it's saying anything. And if it attempted to, it didn't come across.
Exactly. That's pretty much where I come down on.
Yeah, I mean, there's also this underlying theme of like loss with the father of the family that he's there with, and kind of overcoming that, and him becoming the father figure for them, which actually is probably the most compelling part of the movie, but that just seems cut short by him leaving every fucking 5 minutes to go back to the mountain.
Exactly. You can't have both ways. You can't do it. You can't double cover that.
Mm-hmm. So
I'm giving it a 0.
Yeah,
0.
I'm going to give it a 0 as well. It just seemed like everything he tried to do was just...
Yeah, maybe it attempted all those things, but it never addressed them well enough or in a robust way.
So, Mr. Mosi, onto you with the antagonist.
All right, so the antagonist, I would say, is...
Pacing.
Redleaf. Maybe pacing. The corporation is kind of the antagonist here. They are the ones that actually throw the biggest challenges his way, but they're just basically a non-entity for this.
Yes,
most of this movie.
Exactly. Well said.
The biggest way that it's personified is the guy that is basically trying to kill him towards the end, or as the conclusion starts. But I think that may be a little too late at that point, and their confrontation doesn't even really last very long.
And it's also pretty much rendered meaningless at this, to add on to that.
I don't know if I can think of anything more compelling than that as an antagonist.
No, I agree with it. I can't think of anything else beyond that, and I agree that they're a lackluster, at best, antagonist in that sense.
See, my problem with they're the cliched corporation villain, that they're making moves that are... I understand
they're in it
that
for
as
the evils.
As the audience, that wasn't the point I was going to make. The audience knows more information than they do, but they're making choices that are working against their interest. If they had not sent the other guy, Willem Defoe would have actually have gone in and captured that the tiger for them.
Sure.
Yeah.
And that's the big problem. It's just, it doesn't, their actions are antagonistic only for the nature of the plot versus actual rationality.
Yes, that's very well said as well, and I definitely agree.
I'm going to give it a 0 for that.
If not clear, I'm giving it a 0 here as well.
Yeah.
Why would they called him out for falling for this family? And they're just like, oh, we're just going to take away the one thing that's probably keeping him from walking off this job.
They screwed themselves over in various small ways, and certainly that in the end, and it made 0 sense. It wasn't, like, if you're going to be an evil corporation, then at least make rational, in quotes, evil choices.
It wasn't hubris. It wasn't, trying to screw over Willem Defoe in order to get one up. Like, it was just a bad choice.
Yeah.
And it was a bad choice.
A bad choice by a company that should have known better, especially because they had previously made that same bad choice.
Exactly.
Very obviously, they killed the father, and Willem Dafoe finds his body
and
at some point. There's a bullet in his head. Mm-hmm. Super obvious thing, but maybe learn from your mistakes, giant company. I don't know.
If you're going to try to be Umbrella, at least go for broke and, again, make informed decisions about your corrupt corporation.
That's a 0 for me.
Yeah, it's a 0 for me.
I wouldn't buy stock in Redleaf.
They're coming down
those type of
tubes.
decisions.
All right, Rich, on to you, the protagonist.
I would like to argue that Redleaf is the protagonist, just his sheer ineptitude at being the antagonist.
All right.
No, seriously, though, it's Willem Defoe.
Oh, I guess we should mention his name now that
Dr.
we're
Marty.
halfway through. Martin David.
He's not a doctor, is he?
He's faking being
I don't know. Oh, that's right.
The widow is a doctor.
You're right. His cover, he's a professor, but he's just a mercenary, really.
Dr.
Sure.
Willem Defoe.
Yes.
Martin David. Yeah, what can you say?
I'll say this. As bland as that name is, that's how bland of a protagonist he was to me.
I'm trying to think of what protagonisty things that he's done. I guess the camera stayed on him the longest.
Yeah.
So therefore,
by default.
Yeah.
Sure.
This one's tough for me.
It's tough for me as well.
I'm wavering in here, so you got maybe.
Well, here's why. The character is kind of boring, but Willem Dafoe does a very good job acting it. And the dialogue isn't bad. That's going to come in later under dialogue. I don't think the dialogue's bad. But all those things as a whole making up this character, I thought it was somewhat enjoyable to watch him, be Willem Dafoe in the wilderness and setting up traps and stuff. And he had good chemistry, as you said, with the family. So this one's tough. I'm leaning towards a positive score on this one, but I'm not sure yet.
When a split like this happens, or like it's really tough in my mind, I try to mathematically divide it up, as maybe familiar with listeners. So I think I'm leaning towards a 55-45 split, 55 being a 1.
Mhm.
Like, it's close. Yes, Willem Defoe is a good actor, pretty much always. And he does a good job with whatever, like, threadbare-ish characteristics the script give him. So I think he is able to round out his character. And he was, I think, the most three-dimensional character in this film by far. So, again, like, it's not great, but I don't think it's a fault of him per se. But as a character and as portrayed by him, I think it's just enough to give it a 1 for me.
William Defoe's character in this, even though I can't remember his name, even though you just said it.
Martin David.
Yeah. He is competent at what he does. It's shown by his actions throughout the entire thing that he knows what he's doing. Sure. He has a good taste in music and opera, which I think was what William Defoe recommended for his character. It seems like something he would do.
It's like a Boondock Saints thing.
Yeah.
And it seems to me that he is kind of an isolated individual and lonely outside of that. And when he finds a group of people, which he's initially hesitant towards and warms up to, he develops a bond. I think there was you mentioned Threadbare. There's a Threadbare character arc here, but it does exist. And William Defoe is talented enough to
carry it through,
to work with it. So I'm leaning towards, if a lesser actor had this role, it would be an awful role. But because it's a better actor,
yeah, I kind of agree.
Pushes it to 1.
Like I said, it just edges over for a 1 for me. I think in the end of the day.
Yeah, I'm kind of feeling the same way. It's just barely a 1, but it's still a 1 for me.
Yeah, soft 1, but
shit, he was the best character out of the movie. So
yeah.
So it's 1's all around.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
Okay, and on to supporting with me. Well, I'll save Scott's favorite actor for him, but I think generally I'm not the biggest fan of children actors, but I thought the Jay and Silent Bob routine that the
yes.
two
let's give Rich credit because he came up with that during the film.
Rich did come up with that. That worked really well, and I like Lucy was kind of a hippie scientist type character, although I didn't necessarily buy the actress's personality as being overly academic.
Well, she was still coming off of the pills, so
that's true. But yeah, the family unit worked very well. I thought they were like, oddly enough, I went into this movie wanting to see Willem Defoe hunt animals, and I kind of wish he spent more time like hanging out with the family. And on that, I think it was a strong supporting cast.
Sure, I guess. So before I speak upon as you're deferring to me, the character or the actor who I love so much in almost anything, but I do agree that the family their dynamic was believable. They had a good chemistry. I believe they were a family. They portrayed themselves as such very well. And there's probably the other, like, maybe I'll leave to Steve-O and or Rich, the anti-greenies in town. Right, but we mentioned Sam Neill is in this movie. He sort of plays like the grizzled or like the veteran tour guide, or like he just knows the area and he lives like his own little farm outside and he keeps an eye on said family. And yes, he becomes Willem Dafoe's tour guide. And so he wasn't in it all that much, but Sam Neill just always does a great job. And like, especially as a side character, he'll just eat up the scenery. I think one of us said like he was literally eating the scenery there during this exchange. So yeah, he's probably my favorite just because of that fact. But I agree with you said, at least in regards to the family, I also like them well enough that I bought into their story and their dynamic.
I agree with both of you. The other characters were kind of crappy, to be honest. Just douchebag townies, I guess, is the best description for them. But of those characters that you guys have mentioned, I thought they all did a good job, and I have to that'll put this over the edge for me, for sure.
Yeah, definitely like the family.
Yeah,
dynamic.
Well,
sorry, I was going to say the little girl was good.
Yeah, she was.
As well as like
she did have a lot of personality, even though, as again, you guys know, and perhaps audiences, I'm not a big fan of children or child actors in general, but she did a pretty good job.
And she had the most character of everyone in the star. But I just want one comment about Sam Neill. you hear Sam Neill's voice before you see his face. And it's like, and Rich, I believe you commented like, when the first line, like, Sam Neill.
Yeah.
And I'm like,
It's him.
So-
Yeah.
his voice introduces his presence. So.
I think he's doing like, I mean, you've seen Sam Neill do an American accent, of course, and various other things, but I believe he is from New Zealand, which is a closely related to Australian accent. So I think he's speaking like he's like slipping back into his natural like
Yeah,
cadence.
just giving it a feel,
Yeah.
giving it like a few different changes here and there.
Yeah, exactly. So yeah, I will give it a 1 as well based on that.
Okay, Scott, onto dialogue.
All right, I am leaning towards a 0 straight off the bat. I'll just say that, just because it wasn't bad, but nor was it engaging. In fact, perhaps the worst sin versus being outright cringeworthy bad is just being boringly bland and like almost literally forgettable. Like we forgot lines, we were talking over lines, and it didn't even matter.
Yeah, we did. I think we rewinded for like one.
Yeah, for
Or
one
rewound
single
for one,
thing.
and then we
we're
just decided
that
never to
wasn't
do that
worth it.
again.
Yeah, exactly. So I think that is the perfect evidence as to why I'm going to give this a 0, unless anybody has any convincing arguments otherwise.
If I was going to give this a 1, it would be because of the dialogue between Sam Neill and Willem Dafoe when they're in the woods.
Yeah, for the
In the
one
first
scene
part of the
that
movie.
was.
Oh, we were playing Who Chewed the Scenery.
Yeah.
most.
That's the one. That's right.
That is by far for me the best dialogue of the film.
Sure.
I don't.
And
It's
it
like a
was okay.
8-minute scene though, so I don't think I can give it. You know, it's for an hour and 40-minute movie. I don't think I can give that the benefit of the doubt for dialogue.
The little girl had good lines.
Actually,
and
you're
she was
right about
throwing out F-bombs left and right.
Yeah, that's
The
true.
fucker's fucking
But
fucked.
that doesn't make it like
Yeah.
good dialogue. Like
No.
it was interesting to her character, yes, but
but I thought we all perked up a little bit
When that happened, yes.
when she would talk. So I feel that's whether it's the actress or whether it's the dialogue for that character that does elevate, but it doesn't forgive the rest of
yeah,
the film.
it doesn't
Oh.
save anything, everything else. So
Yeah, I think I gotta go with a 0 on this.
Yeah, I'm giving it a 0.
yeah,
Mm-hmm.
Okay, and on to style with Stephen Hermosi.
So I spoke about this a little bit earlier. The sense of space and the sense of time in this movie is really
completely
Bad.
fucked. Let's just say,
and
Mishandled.
that plays into the pacing. The shots of Australia were very good, like great shots, but is that strong enough to save the style? There's I just want to mention also, and then I'll turn it over to you guys. The soundtrack to this actually isn't bad. The more I think about it, the more I kind of like it. There's the opera
okay.
part of it. There's the Bruce Springsteen reference is actually pretty decent, like when that pays off. And there's just like a nice orchestral overtone to it. So the soundtrack it was pretty decent. I'm going to hear what you guys have to say about this, and then I'll make my decision.
All right, so I think I mentioned this earlier. So I took off narrative points, but stylistically, like pure cinematography, I think was very, very strong. It had some great shots, looked very nice of the whole Australian wilderness, and even like the blocking and the framing of the shots in the house and so forth. I thought it was all very well done, and especially like I would say 3 to 4 shots that, yes, of the wilderness, but looked excellent. Like it was that transported me to that place in time. So yes, again, as we spoke about, well, I'll agree, Steve-O, that the pacing fucked up the sense of space and time within the narrative. I took that away from the narrative. I will give like pure style probably a strong score. And the soundtrack was okay. It was fine. It was there. Yeah, I like the Springsteen song because that was set up. They referenced that their missing father was a Springsteen fan. So it's fine. When the record came on, it made sense. And the orchestral stuff was like there. It didn't detract. I don't think it added much, but it was still fine. And it, was okay enough choice for those scenes. So I'll probably give it a solid 1.
I'm kind of torn here because one, and I think I might have to give it a 1 for the cinematography because this movie should have the stamp on it paid by the Australian Board of Tourism. But
It might actually have that on the DVD case. We'll have to look.
It was fun. Partly,
You're going to buy the DVD specifically.
No, I'm just
look?
going to look at the case. I'm not going to buy it. Shit.
You
But
can find a place that sells it.
what I'm trying to consider what genre this is, and if it's a thriller,
Nope.
It didn't do its work within the genre well.
Saying it didn't thrill?
I wasn't thrilled.
I was not thrilled by any parts of this movie.
Yeah, and that's the thing is like, what is the purpose of this film? And I think it's to sell Australia.
Come to Australia.
And it's probably like, so I'm going to say that if that's the intent, I think that's what the intent is. I'm going to give it a 1 for style because I think it did what it was supposed to do.
Sure.
If the point of this film is to sell Australia, they did a really bad job by making Americans feel super unwelcome.
Not only did it make Americans feel super unwelcome, it had them to like kill every single noticeable part of wildlife that you would associate with
is kind of
Australia.
interesting.
If you're a hunter, then come to Australia, kill some, kill a kangaroo.
He even killed an Australian man.
Yeah, that's true, I guess.
Most dangerous.
The most
Yes.
Damn it.
Thank you, my friends. I mean, that all is funny, but like at the end of the day, I think like I said, I'll stand by the 1.
Yeah. Well, I knew right away, like with the scenery shots, that I was going to give it a 1.
Yeah, I mean, I guess that'll tip it over the edge for me. It's, the landscapes were great, and
If nothing else, right?
and there was definitely a good mood and atmosphere to a lot of those shots that are in the forest.
Yeah,
So
exactly.
I'll give it a 1 for that.
All right, Rich, on to you for recommendation.
Exactly.
Huh. Well, if you like Willem Defoe and Sam Neill, there are better movies to watch.
Indeed.
I can't even say, like, if you have time to kill, because...
Nah.
No, I can't really recommend this movie.
Yes. We killed the time for you. So
Yeah.
You know what?
you
I
all are welcome.
recommend our podcast
Instead
in
of the-
lieu of the movie.
Exactly. That's pretty much exactly what I was going to say. I can't say it really any better. Don't watch this movie. Thank us for having watched it for you, and here are our opinions about it.
If you need to go to sleep and you've watched all the Bob Ross films on Netflix already, put this on. You'll go to sleep.
Yeah,
Yeah, it's
that's pretty.
Actually, that's a
probably
good
the
idea. I might
biggest
use this in that too at some point.
Yeah,
it's not
very compelling.
it's not worth watching, really.
Yep.
There are so many other movies out there.
There's a Tasmanian tiger in it for like
30 seconds, maybe a minute.
Say a minute and a half.
Yeah,
Until it gets burned.
yeah, but that doesn't make me want to recommend this movie.
No, I'm gonna cut this off here. 0.
Yeah. 0.
Okay, and that's it. And I will give the final scores. Rich, Steve, and Scott all gave it 4s, and I gave it a 3, making the total score a 3.75, slightly under Hacksaw Ridge.
Yeah. And just real quickly, I believe on Netflix it had a 4 out of 5 star rating, which I think is completely wrong, completely fucked. I don't know why people were rating it so highly. I have no idea.
We're going to go back to recommendation. Watch Monsters Dark Continent way before
Yes.
this movie. Anyway, anyone have any final thoughts?
No,
All right,
I've
What were
already
we watching
forgotten
again?
this movie.
I'm Jonathan Manzer here with Rich Perry,
Have a good night.
Stephen Ramosi,
Good night.
and Scott Thurlow.
And we'll be hunting animals to extinction on the next episode. Good night.
Editing and engineering by Scott Thurlow. Music by Christopher Morgan. Check us out on YouTube and iTunes for the shows, and on Facebook and Twitter for updates.